In this lesson, let us try to understand how we can create the objects in JavaScript. In most of the blog articles, people have written like, we can create the objects in 8 different ways, 7 different ways, 6 different ways. So I will say that there are 2 categories in which you can create the objects. First category is using constructor functions, which is on the left side, and another way is in which you can create the objects is using object.create. So there are only 2 ways, basically the main ways in which you can create the objects. Now there are some variations. For example, in previous lessons we have seen how we can create the objects using the literal syntax. So basically when we use this literal, what happens is that special constructor function gets called, and that function is called as this object. Okay, so it basically invokes this particular statement, new object, and it is going to create an object for us. So that happens behind the scene. So this particular syntax is given just for the simplicity, but behind the scene it is still calling this constructor function, and that is why I have put this in this constructor functions category. I'll come to this factory functions later on, but before that let me go to object.create. Now second way in which you can create the objects is using object.create. So in the first way, what we have to do is that we have to use the constructor functions and then objects will be created. But in here we don't need the constructor functions. Even if we have just objects, we can still create the objects from those objects. So basically we don't need any constructor functions. And in here, let me talk about these 2 parameters that this create method takes. The first parameter is we have to pass the object from which the new object will be inheriting. Okay, and the second parameter is basically the properties object. So the object can have the own properties, and there can be some properties that it will inherit from other object. So the own properties can be defined in this second parameter. Okay, so that is the only difference between constructor function and object.create. So both these will create the objects. It is just that it is different ways in which you can create the object. Now coming back to these factory functions. So factory functions is nothing but just a simple function in JavaScript. It is just a simple function. Only difference is that it is returning an object. Now a function can return like true, false, boolean values, primitives, numbers, etc. But the function that returns the objects is called as factory functions. The reason why it is called as factory functions is because it is a factory of objects. It is generating the objects. That's why it is called as factory functions. And the way in which factory functions can create the objects is by using this literal syntax, or using this new object, or using another constructor functions, or it can also use object.create. So it depends. Like we can create objects in any of these ways. Now I'm gonna create a car class using constructor function as well as Es6 class syntax. So let's get started. To create the constructor function for the car class, we have to use the syntax function car. It is just normal function, but only thing that you need to do here is that you need to use this keyword, and then whatever the properties you want to attach to this object you can attach here. Make is equal to say make, and we will pass that make in the parameters. So the car class is created using the constructor function. Now to create the object from this constructor function, we have to use this syntax. Let c1 is equal to new car, and I'm gonna pass here make as Honda. So object c1 is created, and as you can see, this is how this object is going to look like. If you look at the prototype of this c1 object, you will notice that the constructor property is set to function car. That means this object was created using this constructor function. Now let us do the same thing by using the Es6 class syntax. So here we go, class Es6 class, and in here we will have a special function called as constructor. Remember that in the older syntax We didn't have this construction function, we had just simple function. And inside this function we are going to initialize the properties of this object is equal to make. That's it. Es6 class is created. Now we want to create the objects out of that. So syntax is this one. Let C4 is equal to new Es6 class, and here you can pass the make. Let's put Tesla over there. So C4 object is created, and if you look at the object, this is how the object looks like. So there is just one property on this object, and if you look at the prototype chain, you will notice that this prototype object is looking like this, and you can see that this particular object was created using this class Es6. Okay, that's it. Thanks for watching.